journey yourself, going from D3, transferring D1, and now you getting drafted in the fourth round of the NLL. So that's pretty amazing. But yeah, so if you want to take us, we always like to start early on. When you were younger and when you were just getting into things. So if you want to take us all the way back to then, and then kind of work your way up to now, and we can dive in deeper on some topics as we progress on.
Cool, yeah, sounds good. Um, so I got into lacrosse kind of late. I think it was my friend, I'll shout him out, Charlie Stutzenberger. We were in gym class one day and I had forgotten my shorts and I asked him to borrow a pair and he said, "Yeah, but you got to come out to lacrosse practice this afternoon, like try out." And that's kind of how I started out. So shout out Charlie. And played for like a year. Kind of started to realize I liked it more than I think I was playing baseball at the time, and wanted to start doing that in the springtime instead of baseball. And so I think like eighth grade year, played that all spring and wanted to play for like a club team in the summer. So I played for a local club with a guy who's now my lacrosse mentor, has been for a while. Um, and I played for him, his club, until like sophomore year of high school. And then that's when I kind of started taking it really seriously. I just played at my public high school, Plymouth North, in South Shore, Massachusetts. And we weren't very good, but we had my class had some good players and we played well together. So we were able to win some games, make the playoffs a couple of years. Um, but no one had really played in college until basically I'd gotten there. I think we had like one guy maybe go D3. And after my sophomore year, when I started kind of realizing like I like this a lot, um, I was like, all right, I want to play in college. Started to like take club more seriously, try and like go to prospect days, stuff like that. And basically, the best lacrosse school that I could find that was like a good fit for me ended up being Stevenson. And I went there and played for Coach Canabine, who is a hard-nosed SOB. And he was really good for me, I think, for my development, and really taught me a lot about the right way to play the game and how to deal with things in life. And so I played there for a couple years, had a couple successful years, and when COVID hit, uh, kind of realizing I would have an extra year of eligibility after getting my bachelor's degree, I started considering what should I do? Should I fifth year here? Should I move around? What's the deal? And I knew kind of after a while thinking about it, really wanted to come back to New England and be closer to my family, closer to home. And ended up transferring to University of Vermont, where I'm at now, and absolutely love it. And
Oh, cool.
all
What
along
year are
that,
you over there right now?
yeah. So I'm a grad student now. This is my
Okay.
last year right now, and so all along that way, I was playing box lacrosse as much as I could, and was lucky enough to play for some good coaches who scouted me to some NLL scouts, and ended up getting drafted in the fourth round 2021 draft. And yeah, super lucky for that. And yeah,
Nice, nice. Well, we'll definitely dive in a little more into, the latter portion of your career so far, but I like to go back a little bit to your early days. And now, when you were younger, I know you said I think you said it was eighth grade that you started to play.
yeah.
Um, Now, what sports were you playing at the time? Was it just baseball, or were you playing various sports?
Yeah, so I was playing everything. I think I was playing hockey for sure, lacrosse, baseball, and I like dabbled in football, like a lot of flag football stuff. But I also was blessed to grow up in like an unbelievable neighborhood with like a ton of kids, and we would play everything under the sun on the weekends, like kickball, kick the can, capture the flag, manhunt, you name it. We were
That's
just
stuff you
ripping
don't
it.
see
So
anymore.
yeah, seriously, I think
Yeah.
I was blessed because we didn't have like phones growing up until like basically high school. So we would
Right.
just
Yeah.
know wherever the bikes are, you know?
I know.
Yeah,
Honestly, that's how it
that's
should
how it
be.
was too.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, that's where honestly I feel like they're a lot better athletes back in the day simply because they were just outside doing stuff. You know what I mean? Like they're
Yeah.
not inside playing video games and spending time on their phones like the younger generations now. But do you have any siblings or anything like that that play lacrosse, or were you the first one?
No, I was the first one really in my family at all. My dad played hockey. No one else really played lacrosse. It was kind of just, like I said, just my friend told me I had to come out to tryouts. I was like, sure, screw it. Sounded cool. So,
That's awesome. That's awesome. Did you have any like aspirations to play any sport like past high school, or were you just kind of going with the flow? I know a lot of guys, especially in hockey. Dylan and I are both hockey players. When you're really young, like, and you're looking into, college and pro players, you're like, I want to be in that position one day. Like, were you ever thinking about that with hockey or with baseball or
oh
anything like
yeah,
that?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. When I was a kid, I thought for sure I was going to the NFL or the NHL. Like, no doubt in my mind, I was like, oh, I guess I'll just play in the NHL, like, whatever. Um, but it never really like clicked to me until I had like really good mentoring in lacrosse. Like, the combination of like working hard and like having the dream together. Like I thought like
Mm.
hockey was just like, oh, like I'll just play club and like since I never really got like the best coaching in hockey, I never was really able to put the two together. But once I realized like, okay, you get good at being passionate about something and then working super hard on top of it. Once I started to like see myself get better, I was like, okay, like I can definitely do something with this if I just keep working, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely, yeah, that goes a long way. And did you have like a? I know some people pick it up later. I mean, obviously, you picked up lacrosse a little bit later than most people. Professional athletes. You think of professional athletes, they start when they're really young and they
Yeah,
progress through high school, college, and then they end up playing pro. But obviously, you started pretty much right before high school, which is kind of rare if you really think about it. And I myself, I
yeah,
never played
for
lacrosse,
sure.
but I have some friends that are on that track right now. We've actually, we had Brett Dobson on. He's in the PLL,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of correlations between sports, but there's also a lot of differences in terms of, obviously you have the basic stuff like the training that you do is going to be a little different. But one thing I'm curious about is like the environment that that you grew up through, playing multiple sports. What's the differentiation between sports and, playing lacrosse? Is there a difference, like, the locker room environment, being on the field, the communication side of stuff, like, what do you feel is different between the sports?
yeah. So that's a great question. I think lacrosse is like an amalgamation of a ton of different sports. Like, it's got the stick skills of hockey. It's got like
Mhm.
physicality of like football. A lot of basketball players are really good lacrosse players because the schemes match up, especially like man up offense. A lot of similarities to basketball. One of my favorite things about lacrosse is the locker room, and I think if you've been on like a kind of like a small team locker room style, like you would love lacrosse because it's just a great group of guys getting together like any other sport, and some those are some of the best times. So I encourage. That's also like why I encourage like people to try lacrosse out because like if you're good at like soccer or like football, like you'd probably make a good lacrosse player, and like it's got all the other similarities of sports that people love, like just hanging around the guys, having like team dinners, locker room talk, all that good stuff.
Right,
And
right.
at the end of the day, that's some of the best times to like just being a part of a team sport. I mean, playing hockey, it's the same way. You know, it's not the on ice stuff that you remember. It's always, the times you spent with your teammates, road trips, whatever it is. Like
Absolutely.
those are the things that you remember, and that's ultimately what sets you up for success in life too. You learn a lot in the locker room.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and I feel like it's something that a lot of serious athletes kind of struggle with, which is that balance between like, getting to work every day, putting in the time, getting better at your craft, but also enjoying that environment that you're in because ultimately it's gonna end someday, and you're not gonna
Yeah.
have that locker room environment in a freaking work office. You know what I mean? Like it's
Hmm.
not gonna happen, right? Now, how have you been able to sort of, because obviously, you're progressing in your career to a point where you're an elite athlete. You're getting to, to that point where people look at you in that sense. So, how have you been able to progress through the stages of being a lacrosse player while also trying to maintain a healthy balance between the work and also being with the guys and building relationships and friendships with them?
Yeah, it's a great question. One thing I love to do is like I'm a guy that I think I've gotten really good at like being able to draw the line. Like I think if
Mm.
you ask any of the defenders on my team that I go against every day, they know I'm gonna be a prick to them out there. Like I'm gonna go balls to the wall right at them in their face every day, no matter what. And like we might like literally get in a physical fight at practice, but like I'm very good at leaving it out there. And as soon as we get back into the locker room, like we're best of friends, and I would do anything for them. And I think that's such a huge key that a lot of people, some people don't understand, and I think everyone needs to understand if you're going to be a successful teammate because there's so many things that happen every day in practice that like a guy is gunning for your spot every day, right? And so they're trying to play their best and you're going against them. And there's so many different dynamics that you got to handle. You have to be able to leave the stuff on the field. You have to be able to leave it there. And you can't like let your friendship like lean on just lacrosse because that's not going to be stable. Like you said, like it's going to end someday. You're going to have like fights, you're going to have disagreements, like you're going to have to go against a guy in practice. So you got to leave it out there, and you got to be able to have kind of a different mentality in the locker room and on the bus and at dinners and whatnot.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find it like um for us in junior hockey, I'm sure you're familiar with junior hockey considering,
Yep.
you played and you played the sport and whatnot. But when we Dylan and I both played junior hockey, there was one thing that was very particular about the sport and about that phase of like almost like an egotistical phase in the sport where you're trying to get to that next level and there's not much of a team environment going on, meaning like you're not willing to put your life on the line as you would, in a high school team or a college team, just because it's like it's every man for himself, like trying to get to that next level.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always curious about other athletes and how they've been able to manage that balance because I think that's what makes the game great, right? Like that's what winning
Absolutely.
teams do. They're able to create that type of environment. So no, that's awesome. And just going back a little bit, you said that I mean it's kind of correlative, but when you started, you liked the sport obviously. When did you really start to take it seriously to the point where, you started weight training and putting in more time, stick work, all that kind of stuff, particular to the sport?
Yeah, I definitely think my sophomore year of high school was a big turning point for me. I think I started to have some of my best friendships on like my lacrosse teams, and they really like helped me out like off the field, moving through life and maturing as a young man. And I think I kind of just saw myself fitting that mold really well. And like I said, my lacrosse mentor is named Coach Scott, John Scott. He really showed me like the ropes of how hard work can turn into creating greatness for yourself. And I was able to lean on into him, asking him about schemes and what kind of drills should I be doing. And I was also blessed to have YouTube basically. A lot of kids like think about a guy like growing up in the 80s, like how would he watch film on his favorite players? Like I actually have no idea. So like I would just watch guys at nauseum on YouTube, and I would go to as many lacrosse games as I could. And I would basically just study some of my favorite players. I still tell the kids that I coach now, watch a game, but only watch one player. Pick a guy for that whole game and follow him and see what he does. What kind of time does he have? How's he playing? Is he winning every ground ball? What's he doing really well? Like his spacing and just how he works within the team. And I think that was huge for me. And basically, yeah, that sophomore year is definitely that turning point for me.
Yeah, and you make an interesting point too about watching film, and I think you can see it in the younger ages more than because you create your own identity as you progress through your career. But as a
Yeah, of
kid,
course.
like you want to imitate, your idols, right? So you see a lot of
Yeah.
younger kids like they'll start to play like a particular player, and I think that's great. But I also think, um, there's a potential there of watching games like you were saying, and like almost like dissecting a game, watching a player, whatever it might be ultimately it's going to help your own game, right? Like you're going to
Oh
get
yeah.
those skills, you're going to learn those skills, you'll practice what somebody's doing in particular, and then carry it on into your own game. So that's interesting, very
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
So to jump ahead a little bit, Jake, so how did the opportunity at Vermont arise? Walk us through how did that come to be and what was the biggest transition for you moving from D3 stage to the Division 1 level?
So basically, my senior year at Stevenson, it's now post-COVID, and I know I have a year coming up, and so I had like a successful year at Stevenson, and we made a small playoff run, got to the third round there, and basically I knew I wanted to like explore my options, and I was looking at like New England schools, and it came down to a couple of different schools. And Coach Fife's actually, the first time I talked to him was the night before his honeymoon, and so he had like just gotten married and was busy calling me on the night of his honeymoon, and I think I was in a hotel like waiting for a box game to come up, and he called me, so I kind of knew like this guy like is really interested, and kind of like the relationship that we had going. The biggest transition, that's a good question. I actually haven't thought about that too much. I would say the level of play, obviously. At the D3 level, there are a lot of really good schools, like a lot of the NESCAC schools, a lot of the schools in Virginia and Maryland are really, really talented, but the highest end schools that we play at D1 are just like complete different beasts. Like when you're playing ACC lacrosse schools, like the Dukes and the Virginias, it's a whole other animal. And I would say like the depth of D1 teams is crazy. Like there's basically everyone on the roster is a very, very good lacrosse player, and can play a lot of different places. And so I think I noticed within like a lot of teams, like they'll have five seriously legit attackmen and nine midfielders that can really genuinely play, and goalies that, they have three goalies that are seriously talented goalies. So I would say definitely the depth, and then like the high end talent when you're playing out of conference is seriously a whole different animal.
Yeah. And how does so you did mention like the NESCAC teams are the more dominant ones in D3 anyways. I actually have a buddy of mine, he plays at Bowdoin. He's
Yeah.
actually looking to take a similar track that you did, do it, try to get a transfer to a D1 school. But how did Stevenson fare in terms of that comparison to a NESCAC school?
Yeah, so we always our conference was not as deep as the a lot of the conferences out there, so we would load up on a stout like early season out of conference schedule, and that was really where we kind of cut our teeth and learned, the kind of team we would be. And we have like a rivalry with Salisbury. We would play a lot of like the NESCAC schools like Lynchburg, and we play Christopher Newport and like all these like highly ranked Division 3 teams, and that's where we would kind of find out, what we need to work on, the team that we're going to be, like who's who in the depth chart, stuff like that. So I think I actually also played one of my current coaches. Now I actually played against him. He played at Tufts, and I think it was my sophomore year when he was a senior. We played against each other, which I think is really funny.
Yeah, that is funny. Wow, jeez. And speaking of coaches, you mentioned that the Stevenson coach was he was a tough coach to play for in
Yeah.
terms of his strategy or his coaching mentality. How do you think that contributed to your game as a player?
Yeah, so Coach Canabine, he's a hard-nosed SOB.
Yeah,
There's no gray area with him. It's very black and white, and
yep,
which I actually really liked. You know what's expected, and you know what he's asking to bring to the table every day. And I think it honestly made me tougher because he would push me. He would get in my gloves if I wasn't playing up to par, and he would let it be known like what he was asking and what I wasn't bringing. So. There's
right,
no hiding from it, and I think it was really good for my game, and I learned a lot of life lessons from him as well. And just every coach that you meet, and all your teammates, it's all just like working people. Like if you're a good people person, you're probably going to be a good teammate. And with every coach you have, you kind of gotta find that area where you guys are going to work together. And I think that was just a great experience for me, learning how to deal with a coach like that. And I'm sure he learned stuff from me as well that will help him coach players in the future.
right, definitely. And now, just going back to the beginning of your college career, at that point in time when you first went to Stevenson, did you
Mhm.
think you'd ever play D1, or were you just kind of like, or even, get drafted too? Were you in that mindset of like, I'm gonna get there, or were you just kind of like, let's see what happens here?
Yeah, so I think I just wanted to have a successful college career at that point. I
Yeah.
wasn't like entirely sure. The NLL stuff was definitely a thought in the back of my mind because I'd been playing so much box lacrosse in the winters and the summers back home. So I definitely wanted to be able to, figure that out and hopefully like I was thinking I would have to like be a free agent and like just try and make a team through like getting a camp invite. Um, so yeah, I wasn't really thinking too much of it. I was just trying to like get better every day, like 1 week at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 week at a time, and just have a successful college career, I think was my focus. And then once COVID came around, I think that was when I first started thinking like, oh, I could probably play D1, probably transfer and make some things happen. So I really wasn't thinking about it until COVID happened and we got
Yeah.
sent home for what we thought was going to be 2 weeks, turned into a year. So
I know. Tell me about it. Jeez.
yeah.
Um, yeah. What was like? So obviously here you are now. You're at UVM. What do you think was one attribute that you developed over the course of your college career in D3 that allowed you to make that jump to D1? Was it one thing in particular that you were really trying to drive home day in and day out, or was it just an accumulation of everything?
Yeah, I think if I had to hone in on something, it would be persistence. I
Okay.
think I just stuck with it, through all the ups and downs. I like to tell like a lot of people, especially like the freshmen on the team now, whenever we're kind of just talking lax, I just say like if you can't really deal with the ups and downs, then you're like this probably isn't for you because there's going to be, one day you're going to be at the bottom of the barrel thinking like, oh, I've worked so hard and I like blew it because I had this like bad play and I'm going to get benched or whatever. And then another day you're going to have an OT winner that you didn't expect. And you kind of got to stay in the middle of the high and low of that. And I always tell, like I said, like if you can't deal with the highs and lows, you can't really play sports at an elite level. And I think I just stuck with it through all the people kind of saying, oh, this is it for you. Or like if I had like a bad week of practice, like I still would go out and work hard no matter what, and always get extra reps. And so I think I just sticking with it and just being persistent with it is really what was able to move me forward.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. And one other thing too that I feel that college athletes in particular, and Dylan and I talk about this a lot, is the balance between schoolwork and the sport that you love, you want to get better at. Obviously, the more higher end athletes, the ones who take it more seriously, they're going to dedicate more time to their sport and their craft, which is going to take away time from doing the schoolwork side of stuff. And some college athletes are working part-time jobs on the side too. It's like, how have you been able to manage that time in a way that has allowed you to thrive when you ultimately comes time to come onto the field?
Yeah, so I think this probably sounds a little cliche, but the routine is seriously something that you can take advantage of if you really know it down. I've always been like working like little side jobs, mainly coaching throughout my whole career. And what I've loved is like get your practice time, your work time, my coaching time, and figure out when that's going to be throughout the week, and then make your schoolwork schedule through the week so that like come Saturday, come game day, you have everything taken care of and you don't have to worry about anything. And that's been the biggest thing for me. And I'm still learning how to manage that even now. So, what I realized this year, probably should have learned this earlier, is like I like to have my schoolwork done like Thursday night so that Friday it'll be a pregame practice. I'll just be loose, free, nothing in the back of my mind. And then Saturday's game day and I can just take that head on. And so I think if you can really get good at nailing down routines, even as the seasons change, that can be super advantageous.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think that it even changes, like for me, I find I'm the same way. I like a routine, a consistent schedule that I can follow. I know what I'm doing, day to day, week to week. And I think it changes even semester to semester
Absolutely.
with what classes you got on. Okay, are we in season, out of season? And like, you know, now that I'm in fourth semester, let's say, of doing this, like you kind of get a feel for, okay, the first 2 weeks, I got to figure out what's going to work best for me. How can I adjust to, what classes I have now? What's our training schedule looking like? And, taking the first couple weeks, dialing it in. So, like you said, you can find that pattern, that groove that works for you.
Yeah, specifically for lacrosse players. So we have the fall, which we call fall ball, which is our off season, and we like practice a bunch, and we're really heavy on the strength and conditioning. And then we have like a couple scrimmages at the end of the fall season. Basically, that will be like completely different from your spring schedule. So like
Mhm.
practice times will usually be earlier in the fall, and then you'll have weights at a certain time, and then we'll have like in the spring, like say you have practice in the morning and then lift right after in the afternoon. Like nighttime will be your homework. So you kind of gotta deal with that season by season. And so it's not going to be set for like a whole year. You kind of gotta get good at like saying giving it like a 3 week trial period and then nailing it down and following through for it for the rest of the season.
For sure.
Yeah, and I guess that sort of brings us up to speed where we are now. Um, so you're a grad student. What are the goals moving forward? Like, what's your plan? Or, everybody has a plan, but obviously things change, right? But
Yeah.
a general trajectory of where you want to be. Do you want to maybe take the coaching route down the road, or how far do you want to take this?
Yeah. So I haven't put a ton of thought into it. I know
Hmm.
for the box stuff, my immediate goal is to prepare this whole summer, hopefully make the Firewolves team out of camp in the fall, next fall. So that's definitely my focus as a player. And then I haven't really thought about coaching too much, but I have realized that I do really love it. This year, since the fall, I've been coaching for a clinic up here in Vermont called Inside Roll, and it's basically just a bunch of public school kids in the area, and we get them 3 nights a week, and we work on skill development and odd man situations and all that kind of good stuff. And I have some of my teammates coaching with me, and it's super rewarding to see kids getting better, like in front of your face, and just giving them high level coaching is super fun, and it's just an awesome thing to see. Like you'll have a kid who like maybe he'll be struggling with something for a couple weeks and then you kind of realize, okay, I got to deliver this message to him in a different way. And then you'll see it click with him and then you'll see him start doing it in practice more and then he's succeeding with it. And it's just really, really rewarding feeling. So I'm definitely starting to think about coaching more and more. But also definitely right now, just trying to stay where my feet are and have a successful season, end of the season here with UVM. We have some big conference games coming up, and we're looking to make a playoff push after that. So that's definitely where my
Oh
head's
yeah,
at.
oh yeah, it's good stuff.
That's awesome.
Present moment, that's where it's at, right?
Exactly. It's hard. That's another thing too. I think it's extremely hard for people to stay present, and I definitely not good at it, and I'm trying to get better. That's definitely something I would say, if you're a young athlete listening to this, try and work on being present and staying present.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you're right. It really is hard, and it's getting harder every year with, you know, the resources that are at the fingertips, especially, well, all of us, but of the younger generations who have access to, social media and all these videos of, I think the expectation to become great is just so high that it
Yeah,
really weans kids off of a sport too soon.
exactly.
Like before they can even know if they're gonna love it, if before they can even put in the hard work to know if they're gonna love it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So that
absolutely.
is a good point. But I think that's a valuable lesson too, is like the present moment. And I think we all struggle with it a little bit. To be honest with you, it's a difficult thing to manage with just all the chaos that's going on from a day-to-day basis. So
100%. That's more than just a lesson for lacrosse players. That's a lesson for
yeah.
life. You can really, I thoroughly, like, genuinely believe that you can do whatever you want in this life. And if you just stick with it and stay present and kind of don't let people tell you no, you can't do it, then you're going to be just fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, we covered a lot in a short amount of time, but one thing too is so this summer, I think you're from Mass, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we're working on getting our first location, warehouse and office space this
Sweet.
summer. So we're looking to start doing in-person podcasts and stuff. So we definitely love to have you on, dive, deeper on some more topics and whatnot. I mean, some of our episodes they can get to like hour and a half, 2 hour range. So we're trying to change that a little bit just to make it a little shorter. But do you got anything else that you want to discuss or give advice to our listeners?
No, that's kind of all I got. I'll definitely be willing to come out to your guys' office space. I'm mostly in Plymouth, and my gym is in Norwood, which I go to. Actually, I'll shout out Compete Indoor Sports in Norwood. That's the last thing I say. They've helped me out a ton, and I owe them a bunch. But yeah, absolutely. Let me know, and I'll definitely be willing to come out to the warehouse, say what's up.
All right, good
Right
stuff, man.
on.
Well, hey, good luck with the rest of your season. We'll be following along, and we wish you the best of luck, and hopefully you guys make a playoff push.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right,
Sure.
have a good
Thanks
one,
for
Jake.
coming on, Jake.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Fine. All right, that's a wrap on another interview. It's actually been a long time since the last time we had a podcast, which is unfortunate, but I think this summer too, like once we hopefully we can get that in-person recording going, I think it's gonna be much better. But
Yeah.
anyways, another great story. Like we've already said on previous episodes, like I don't think we've missed once in terms of a story that was like, that's just an average story, right? Like this kid, he's got starts off going D3, wanted to go D1, and then he ended up transferring D1, and now he's at UVM and gets drafted fourth round in the NLL draft. Like it's quite the story, right? Like that's an underdog story in itself, and obviously it takes a lot of perseverance and I asked one question I asked him was like, and I usually ask other guests as well, but one question that I felt I wanted to know more about was what really separated him to be able
Mm.
to make that happen. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
And what a story too, just right from the start, like how he got into it. Eighth grade,
Yeah.
late, forgot what I forget what he said. Forgot a pair of shoes or shorts for shorts for gym class, and his buddy tells him he has to come up for tryouts, and now he's drafted in the NLL and playing Division 1 lacrosse. Like that's pretty crazy considering you look at you and I, like hell, I started skating when I was 3 or 4, and into Timbits at 4 years old. Like and a lot of hockey players are like that. They start from a young age, and it takes years to develop those skills. So to consider that, he still made it to a high level and still pursuing greater things, while starting, so late, almost in high school. That's an underdog story.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I asked him comparison, between sports and whatnot. And I wish we kind of dove deeper on that and something that we can talk to him about in the future, just because I'm curious. Hockey's such a competitive sport where even if you're the best, it's still hard to make it to the top. Like it's still not
Mm.
guaranteed. You know what I mean? And not to say that lacrosse is any different, but I do think lacrosse is going to get to that point eventually, just because of how much popularity is around it in today's day and age. Like everybody's playing lacrosse. Like it wasn't like that when I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, like I don't know, like nobody was really playing lacrosse. At least it seemed like that. It wasn't as popular as it
Yeah,
is now.
which is funny. So funny you say that. So technically, Canada's national sport is lacrosse because it started in Canada. That's where it was, founded. Now we've kind of adopted hockey as our sport, and that's what everyone, is regards as our national sport is hockey. But technically, it is lacrosse. But growing up in my town, Medicine was a hockey town. Like everyone played hockey, and there were one kid growing up played lacrosse, and it was like, well, that's weird. Like, why isn't he playing hockey? Like
Yeah,
it wasn't as popular, but it's definitely a growing game. Even when we had um, Dobson on, he talked about just the growth of the PLL and how
yeah,
it's a fairly new league, and just the growth that the game as a whole has seen is pretty crazy. And I think you're right; it will eventually get to that point.
yeah. And I think that's a testament to the players that have gone through the whole system, right? Like ultimately, it's going to take a group or a team or you know a few dozen players that are elite in
Mm.
lacrosse to be able to get to that level, and then kids are admiring them, idolizing them, and that's when they seek, you know, training from them, and then there you go. Something like Jake does now. He trains younger kids. Like that's inspirational to those kids and instrumental in their growth as a player. And ultimately, that there's going to be a few kids that maybe he trains that ends up going to the NLL or the PLL or something like that, and then it's just this recurring process that keeps going round and around and around. So I think that's how it's growing, honestly. Like you have some elite players that have been able to really utilize their personal social platforms and media to be able to grow the game, which is great.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome because it creates another avenue for younger kids to be able to play a sport that they might not be interested in other sports, and lacrosse might be the one, which is great because I think sports is obviously crucial to the development of anybody, really.
Mhm. And lacrosse is a great game too. I mean, obviously very similar to hockey, but contact, fast pace, physical
Mhm.
game, strategic. Like it's an all around sport that, like you said, is great for personal development, team building, everything. It's a great sport to watch. And it's funny you say that. So there's 73 Division One lacrosse teams, and only 60. I guess it's grown in the last couple of years. Next year there'll be 63, I believe, with who comes in. But I'm curious how many people or how many players there
For
are
hockey, you're
in
saying?
hockey. There'll be
Hockey.
60,
Okay.
whatever. Yeah, and there's 73 lacrosse Division One. So there's more Division One lacrosse, which I'd be surprised because I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, or I'm curious what they would be. But the amount of youth players playing hockey compared to lacrosse, I think there would be a lot more youth hockey players than lacrosse, even though there's more Division One lacrosse teams.
Yeah.
And it just shows just that's how competitive hockey is. Like to play Division One hockey is hard. Like that is extremely difficult
Uh,
to do
sure.
because you look at the pool they're pulling from in Canada as well as the US and overseas. It's got to be the most diverse, one of the most diverse college sports as far as nationalities go. With all the different nationalities from Europe coming over as well. Anyways, we're getting off on a tangent, but um, it was great to see and listen to Jake's story and how he got into it and what he went through to ultimately end up Division One and hopefully pursuing professional lacrosse next year.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited to see his journey progress forward, and I'm excited to have him on again too. Like, I was glad that he was open to coming to the
Mhm.
university because I didn't realize he's
Great kid.
local. You know what I mean? He's
Yeah,
from Mass,
in
so
Plymouth. Yeah,
yeah, it's perfect. But yeah, we thank Jake for coming on. We hope you guys enjoyed this. We'll keep these outros short just because we want to shorten our episodes a little bit. Um, condense the value in the episodes. But if you guys have any like suggestions or feedback on these episodes and what you'd want us to ask or include or change about these episodes, that'd be great. Um, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.